What's going on, YouTube? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Welcome to Texas Podcast. Once again, thank you for everybody that's been subscribing, liking the comments, the feedback, the likes. Everything helps. It's greatly appreciated. This video, excuse me, because I'm also watching the Denver and Buffalo game, man. Sorry about that. This video is for Mark because he's over there not want to face the truth that he met David Mendenhall's sister in the visiting room. She gave me a picture that I can use as a thumbnail where she's clearly visited David in the past. So if she's saying she shook your hand in the visiting room, I believe her. She has no reason why to lie. She has no reason. If that was the case, she would have came out here talking bad about you, saying this about you. All she said that you were a monster and that you were going to have to pay back what you did and that you were suffering on this earth for your wrongdoings. And rightfully so. You're a sexual deviant. You're a man that's possessed by demonic. You still haven't come to terms with yourself. You're still this predator. And you can try to discredit that she has nothing to do with it. But I just want to drop this video so we can get to the point that this is really David Mendenhall's sister. Because on your last video, you're adamant. But that thumbnail is going to show, maybe you'll recognize her then. Because we all change in time, we all change. So maybe you'll recognize her from that thumbnail. Or maybe you're going to continue to still deny it. You you try to blame everything on this character named Pat from Birmingham. That he was some old school stepper. And that's who you're trying to throw under the bus for the David Mendenhall situation. But in that documentary, that whole reenactment, it almost seems like if it's the story of David Mendenhall. It's so many similarities. The broken jaw. We don't want him to go to the hospital. All these similarities, I mean, it's almost like a puzzle. It's too many pieces not to be able to put together.
um, that his revelations may have had in later life. That his father, that his courageous to speak out on a lifestyle and a topic that results in people's the victim's trauma, innocence lost. So he was part of a system that tortures and exploits its victims. He himself suffered his own trauma, and he was one of the courageous fruit.
You heard what Jonathan Schwarz said right there. That Mark was a victim at one point. So where did Mark's predatory sexual deviancy begin? I mean, we're hearing it from the director. We heard it from Mendenhall's sister. We've heard it from Charles. And as evidence, this is all we have as evidence. So some of y'all are going to be questioning, why do I keep on bringing up the same videos? Because that's all the evidence we have. That's it. We have the director's point of view, what he's bringing to the table, firsthand experiences from Charles. Now we got David Mendenhall's sisters, uh, her point of view. We've heard David Mendenhall's ex-wife's point of view. I mean, how many other point of views do we have to hear to make our assumption that this guy is what he is, a sexual deviant? I don't know what he means by lifetime health care. I don't know what he means by that. You know, he wasn't too specific in detail on what he means by that. But he also said Mark participated willingly and he knew what it was about. I don't know if y'all listen to it, but you can clearly hear Jonathan Schwartz say Mark Moore was a victim at one point. At what point in his life did he become a sexual deviant? Because you gotta start looking at the big picture. Depending on the man that were in his mom's life, what type of characters are those? We all read the newspapers. We all see the videos where these women be bringing these guys into their kids' lives, and they're complete monsters. And just look at the Alabama prison culture. These guys are going in there, fornicating, sexual deviance, homosexuality, and then they come back out here and they be shacking up with these single moms. That's the reality of it. So what's the possibility of the mom letting one of those monsters in, and you got a young Mark there, a troubled young Mark? Because it had to start from somewhere. Mark just overnight was no sexual deviant. Somebody, something had to plant that seed in his head. He reached out to Jonathan Schwartz about that documentary. So I don't know if it happened in prison, out of prison. I don't know. But if you go back to numerous videos of Mark, he's very adamant that that documentary was about him, not nobody else, not no Charles. It wasn't even supposed to be about David Mendenhall. It was supposed to be about him. So maybe somewhere in his sentence, he got turned out and he wrote Jonathan Schwartz a letter disclosing what had happened to him. So that's why Jonathan Schwartz has empathy and sympathy for the man. He understands that that's where Mark became a sexual deviant because he was a victim at one time. But Mark is still denying it.
With the reputation and the hard reality, of Limestone Penitentiary.
So when he would give you a story that included the other person, naturally y'all went to the other person and got that confirmation.
Sometimes, some of the people he made reference to a little more vaguely, some we didn't have access to, some we could not find. So it wasn't like a one-to-one correspondence, but generally, I can only speak in general terms. We were able to research him in the investigative manner that we did because generally what he told us was in keeping with what others had told us. Prison guards, prison administrations, ex-cons, workers in the nonprofit and public sector. And I think the thing that made the film so powerful is that we didn't start out to vilify Mark. So the conversations at first were about his wanting to build families and protect some of the weaker, more innocent prisoners. And we know that part of Mark is very real. In essence, it was his parenting style. And we know the parts of his personality that were more, that were wild and more sexually brutal. We know those parts are real. That was a long time ago. And I'm sure that Mark has come a long way and now into a whole new chapter of his life. But back then, as a younger man, I do, in my heart and my instincts and my journalistic and intellectual, a major rapist, sodomist, and in essence, exploiter of the time and labor of his victims. I also believe he was genuinely protective and had many aspects of his personality that were quite healthy and wonderful. And that's what made the film so powerful. It was his.
So Jonathan Schwarz is trying to justify Mark's actions a little bit, man. That he started out as a protector, and that sexual deviancy came out of him. He couldn't control himself. He could have been a protector for the weak and stood on his ground. But instead, he let that demon possess him and became a sexual deviant. Self-exposing himself in front of other men, ejaculating, getting his due. It's like a voyager, what do you call him? A voyager. And people that just like to go out there and just, peep through the windows, peeping toms. There's all kinds of these sexual deviants. Once they get possessed, you don't know how far these guys go. These are the ones that are just, walking up to random females, ejaculating off on them and running off, or exposing themselves in public, or even the ones recording, hiding in the bathroom stalls. You can keep on going and going and going with these sexual deviants. And I guess that's why those demons run rampant. You know, back then, porn wasn't so accessible. Now you got it on the phones. Now you give a kid a phone, you know, the porn is so easy to get to. Before we didn't have that. It was VHSs and magazines. But even then, they weren't too graphic like how they are now. So Mark You're a sexual deviant. You heard it from the man that did an investigation on you. He basically he was probably a PI. You heard what he said. He did detective journalism. So he basically interrogated you, your victims. Some he couldn't find, some he could. Some you were being vague about their names. So, how many bodies do you really have? How many victims are out there? And you still had the audacity to shake her hand. You're a cold-blooded deviant, man. Sexual deviant. You need to get prayed over. You need help. At this point, ain't no psychiatrist can help you. You need to get on your knees, man. Just like David's father said. You need to get on your knees and ask God for forgiveness. And those are his words. I don't want to get to the point where I'm asking the dad if he would do an interview. That's the only other person in that documentary that has firsthand knowledge. He was interviewed by Jonathan Schwarz. He was in that documentary. He said certain things in that documentary. He should be able to remember the phone calls David was calling from prison. But do we really have to go there and open up all these old wounds? You were a victim at one time, Mark. You know, it's sad. But your predatory behavior, somebody planted that sexual deviancy seed in your head. And you told Jonathan Schwartz who it was. Because that's why he went to Limestone to interview you. But once he got to Limestone and realized, oh, maybe you are the monster. Maybe you're the sexual deviant. Maybe you had one of your victims write that letter to Jonathan Schwartz. You seen the Boo game. I don't know, Mark. I really don't know. And this ain't even about your sexuality. I could care less if you're fruity or not, man. I could care less about that. That's not my agenda is not worried about the next person's sexuality. It's about what they're doing as a human being. So, Mark, stop spewing lies.